So again, I'm Jerry Garfinkel. Welcome to the Jewish Study Center. I'm the treasurer of the Jewish Study Center. And as such, I want to tell you that our classes are all free. Our instructors are all very knowledgeable, and they don't charge us even, which is even better. But we do have expenses. And so we do encourage people to make donations. You can make a donation by going on our website, www.jewishstudycenter.org, and click on donate. And you can donate by credit card or by PayPal or by sending a check. If you indicate you want to send a check, the website will give you the address on where to send your check.
Murray Spiegel, our speaker tonight, he has conducted 40 Seders, each one different. He is sometimes called the Harry Houdini of Seders, and his work, he's written a book, 300 Ways to Ask the 4 Questions, and this work has appeared in the New York Times, and he's been on PBS to talk about Pesach Seders. Murray, please.
All right, so welcome everybody. And I hope you can all hear me fine. Give me a thumbs up, Jerry's. Everything good? All right, great. And then hopefully we'll have an entertaining session. I'm really looking forward to this, and it's an honor for me to present to the Jewish Study Center. We've been trying to have this set up for a little while, and I'm really glad that we're coming to this. So I want to thank each and every one of you for coming tonight and sitting down and enjoying this after this little time together. And I'm really looking forward to sharing with you over the next hour and a smidge, just to set expectations. I'm looking forward to sharing with you what I think you're going to find to be a multicultural feast of ideas and suggestions for your Seder. So we just had spring arrive this week, and I hope you've got spring-like weather wherever you happen to be joining from. And Judaism Springtime Festival is just around the corner, and people are always excited to hear about something fresh and new for the Seder, something that injects fun and increases involvement. So I'd like to ask, raise your hand if you're going to be the one that's going to be leading the Seder. I can see you all, so raise your hand if you're the one leading the Seder. Now put your hand down, so raise your hand if you're just simply going to be going somewhere else, either your friends or your family. So for those of you, doesn't matter which set you are, I hope that I present to you that a lot of ideas and suggestions that you can take to your friends and family, and things that you can use yourself. All right, let me just go back to here. All right, here we go. So now you're actually going to hear 2 presentations. The first of those ideas and suggestions for your Seder, and the second, as Jerry mentioned, I've published a book that has been used in thousands of Seders, and people are always interested in the background behind that project. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time on that also. But now, why should you, here we go, why should you be listening to me? Well, as was mentioned in the publicity, our Seders have been written up in the New York Times. We had a film crew one year from PBS, but the thing that I'm most proud of in terms of establishing my credibility is that I drive around with this. So I've got street cred, like nobody else has street cred. Now, so I want to inspire you for what's possible to do. And I'm going to show you some of the things that we've done at our own family Seders, and just to give you some sense of things that are possible to do. And then I'll give you some suggestions and ideas just following that. So one year, I know that the top of the slide is going to be cut off a little bit. So we've had theme Seders that followed Israel's pioneers and the crypto Jews and archaeological Seder. I'll tell you a little bit more about each one of those. So one year we staged a Bedouin retreat, and we had camels on the walls. Well, we didn't have camels on the walls, but we had cut-ups of camels on the walls, and we had bed sheets on the ceiling, and everyone was pretending that they're out in the desert with the ancient Israelites. Now, this right at the top right at the top of my presentation, this is the most important takeaway, and that is to change the scene. When you and your Seder guests are sitting at a dining room table, what's the expectation? The expectation is we're going to eat. If instead you change the scene, it's very transformative. You can put stuff on the walls that decorate the room. You can go into a different room and put pillows on the floor, and people relax and they begin to realize that tonight really is going to be different. And they'll be more receptive to the special things that you have planned. And it's a really transformative thing. So that is the most important lesson. If you have one thing that you take away from this entire presentation, that is to change the scene. Now, another year we had an archaeological Seder and we staged a tomb setting, and my wife and I arrived in a queen and pharaoh costumes, and we had a blow-up sarcophagus in the corner. Another year we had a flight to freedom. And so as people arrived, they were given a boarding pass. I arrived in pilot's gear, and we had flight maps of Israel and Egypt on the wall. And the entire house was decorated as though it was an airplane taking the ancient Israelites from slavery to the promised land. And of all of the theme seders that I've done, and you can follow each of these. Many of these are on our website. I'll give you the resources later on. But of all the different theme seders that I've done, this particular one, the Flight to Freedom Seder, is the one that the most people across the country have used and run with. I'm really pleased by that. Another year, we talked about the Inquisition, the Converso Jews or the Crypto Jews, and for that particular year, my wife was dressed up as Queen Isabella, and I was King Ferdinand, and we followed the traditions of the Jews from Portugal. And that particular tradition for the halachma, the bread of affliction, they do that standing up. And also in their tradition, the washing of the hands is not done by the leader of the household, but the leader of the Seder, but the lady of the household sprinkles water on everybody. So there's my wife watering the guests that came to our Seder that particular year. For my afikoman search, I turn it into a grand puzzle that people have to solve. And so for the archaeological Seder, we had pieces of a clay tablet, and people assembled that like a jigsaw puzzle. And throughout the house, sometimes I hide clues, and you can see that everyone gets involved with this. It isn't just the kids. It's really my favorite thing to do with the Seder. Another year, we had 63 stuffed animal frogs that came exploding out of our skylight for the plague of frogs. Another year, we sacrificed a stuffed animal lamb, and it's very easy to do. We have a bowl that just has some dry ice in there, and it looks like a witch's brew. Okay, now, so this is going to be the main course. There's going to be a feast of suggestions of activities, games, crafts, decorations, songs that you can do following the traditions of Jews around the world. And at the end of the presentation, I'll point you to resource sites that I have created to help you create a meaningful and a participatory and a fun Seder. Now, so again, raise of hands. I'd like to see how many of you are going to be at a Seder where there's going to be a lot of little kids. Okay, so I'd like to see how many of you are doing that. Okay, that's fine. Now, so for those of you who do have a lot of little kids, you know that the challenge is keeping them occupied so that they're not disruptive during the main portion of the Seder. And the way that people have solved that problem is that they have a diversion that involves an activity mat. And so the activity mat could be a Passover maze, and the kids use their fingers to trace their way from slavery to freedom. Or you can have a Passover bingo. This keeps them attentive for the entire Seder, waiting for their activity or their word to be mentioned. And on our site, we have 30 different bingo cards. So you can print out a different bingo card for each of the kids. And you can have a word search. And so for those of you who are really, really good, have you found a couple of plagues that are in this word search? Here it is. So there it is. You got hail, you got boils, you got the firstborn. And so this is something that will keep them occupied. Now you can find on the web placemats, Seder placemats that combine all of these ideas, and families have found this to be very, very successful. Now, I'm all about kids doing things themselves. And one way to have, there's still enough time, the one way to have the kids look forward to the Seder is to have them create their own stained glass Kiddush cup. Very easy to do. You just get some plastic cup and then some colored craft paper and glue that on. And then for the couple of glasses of wine that they're still awake for, they raise their cup and they say, "I made this." It's really a fun thing to do. Okay, now a great idea that I got from Noam Sion out in Israel, a scholar in Israel. He says if you've got kids that can draw anything at all, have them draw pictures of the different steps of the Seder, the Kadesh, Orchatz, Karpas, etc., and then hang these illustrations, hang these decorations on a clothesline or a string from one side to the other, of one side of the room to the other. And as you approach each portion of the Seder, you draw that drawing forward, and little Zach or little Rebecca looks forward to his or her illustration being used. And so they're proud, gives them a pride that they have created something that gets used in the Seder. Okay, there's a pyramid. There are designs for a pyramid you can get, but I don't think many people can do that. I'm going to move on that. In terms of, again, making illustrations, you can ask your children to what does freedom look like? And so make illustrations of that. And it could be, releasing an animal from a cage or summer recess or some global personality that is fighting for their freedom. Don't have to work too hard to find one this year. And again, what you can do is you can use these as a way of decorating your room. Take those drawings to a copy shop and then have them posterized and place them around the room. And it's something that your children will be proud of, and it's a way of making the night really, really different. Or you can have the children tell you by drawing them what their representation of, what does it look like? What does the children look like? The wise children, the wicked daughter, the wicked son, or the wise daughter. And then at the appropriate time in the Seder, you can refer to them. And again, there's something that's pride, that's something that they have created that you're being used that evening. You can also have them draw different Seder themes or things associated with the 4 questions. These are illustrations that the class did in our community for our book. And so here's Miriam and her timbrel, or here's Moses crossing the Red Sea, splitting the Red Sea. And there's lots of things that they can do that way. Now, many of you are familiar with the plagues bags. There's nothing wrong with them. They're lots of fun. You can also get a 10 plagues coloring book, but I'm all about having children do something themselves, create something themselves. So ask your children to draw a representation of the different plagues. What does the plague of boils look like? And what does the cattle disease look like? And again, take those to a copy shop and then use those posters around the room. It's a wonderful thing to do. Okay, Dainu Madness. One of our friends in our community here, I live in kind of north central New Jersey, came up with the idea of Dainu Madness. And so what you can do is have, after each verse of Dainu, you announce a different style of doing the chorus. And it could be just the girls, or while whispering, or while leaning to the right, or put your head under the table. Another variation is to have each line sung to a different age-appropriate melody. And so for the children, it could be On Top of Spaghetti. If you've got teens, you'll have something from Beyonce or Adele. And if you've got boomers, then you have something from the Beatles or Creedence Clearwater. Why is this Dainu Madness? Because you draw the suggestions out of a hat. You, the Seder leader, don't know what's going to come up with. Your participants don't know what's going to come next. The surprise is wonderful. We've done this several times. Many people have used this idea to great effect. Okay, here's my personal favorite little tip. I hide, for the afikomen hunt, I hide lots of fakes throughout the house. I take pieces of matzah ahead of time, and I wrap them in pieces of napkin, the same type of napkin I'm going to wrap the real afikomen in, and I hide them throughout the house. And people find them, they find a little note inside, take Murray to check. And there's a way that I have to determine whether or not it's the real afikomen or not. And usually it's not the real afikomen, because I hide it in a special place that they need clues to find. Or these fake matzah can have the clues. Now, another way to do this is to have hint cards. And so you have plague cards that have a plague drawn on one side, and on the other side you have a letter. So kids find these and they have the letters all scrambled up, and they say, how do we know what order to put them? Some kid will figure out, oh, wait a second, let's go to the Haggadah, and we'll figure out, we'll order them based on the order of the plagues, and they spell out something like the freezer, and all the kids run into the kitchen and pull the afikomen out of cold storage. Now, what's great about this idea? Under normal circumstances, if you, the Seder leader, is the one that hides the afikomen, obviously if the children hide it, then this is not appropriate for that. But if you, the Seder leader, are hiding the afikomen, usually you have one kid that finds it, and you got all the other kids that are disappointed. It's the third year in a row that I haven't found it. I'm really upset. Now, so this way, everybody works together. And so it's a team building exercise. They learn a lifelong lesson that by working together, you can accomplish something that's much greater than just one person. Now, if you've got a clue that requires more than 10 letters, you can use anything that's sequential in the Haggadah. So the animals of Haggadah, the items in Who Knows One, or the steps of the Seder, or frankly, anything that's sequential. And so this is a way you can use these hint cards and have lots of fun with the Afikoman search. Now, if you've got, you can prepare these activity cards. And so when a kid gets a little antsy, you can say, Josh, here's an activity card for you. And you have a little card inside of an envelope and you have these ideas and you say, act out or ask the question that's on here. Now, again, you don't have to take notes. I'll be giving you resource sites, so you'll have all of these things that you can download from our website. So I just want to give an overview during the presentation. So, for instance, for the older kids, it might be create an advertising slogan to get people to move to Egypt during the plagues. And so a suggestion I have for that one is, it's really hot, slaving under the Egyptian sun. But during the plague of darkness, it's a lot more comfortable. So come to Egypt during the plague of darkness. It's lots of fun. Okay, now we have lots of song parodies that our friends and our family have created. I'm going to switch over here to show you our website. So we've got a Seder rap. We've got Pharaoh's Nile to Gilligan's Island. We've got a Passover round, roasted shankbone, parboiled egg to Frere Jacques. Everyone can be singing in harmony. And we've got a Dayenu hat. He saved us from the mean Egyptians and not given them commission Dayenu. Here's a couple other walk like an Egyptian. And we've got something from Israelite from Gilbert and Sullivan's I'm the very model of a major general. We've got something from House of Rising Sun. One that I want to find here. Let's see if I can find it real quickly. We are sitting at the Seder, more food is coming later, but no, I am in pain. But up. It would help my digestion. I could get through all 4 questions if I only had some grain. And so for those of you who don't know, Yiddish grain, of course, is the bitter herbs. Lots and lots of songs on here. I think the next slide, let me see if it's here. Yes, okay. So the next slide, we've got the last one I want to show you is Plagues the Musical. It's a different song for each plague. These songs are tasteless. Kids love them. Kids really, really love them. So that's the end of the songs that I want to tell you about. So you can Google Seders for you. Again, I'll tell you about this more later on, and you'll be able to catch all those. And these songs have been sung by people all over the country, and we really are very pleased when we see this. So that's the main course. And now I'm going to serve you dessert. And I hope you're all ready for dessert. I certainly am. So these are particularly fun and educational things associated with our 4 Questions project. This is something we've been working on for more than 40 years. It's a lifelong labor of love, and these have enhanced thousands of Seders around the world, and we're very, very pleased. People say they now have a new tradition that they've started doing. And my goal is I'm going to show you how you can use these at your own Seders. So what I want to say, we should have said this at the beginning. I know that you're going to have lots and lots of questions. I'm going to take the questions at the end. I did see this one about the link for the song parody. So again, at the end of the presentation, we'll give you the links for everything. So you don't have to write anything down until the very, very end. Okay, so what we did is we asked people all around the world to translate the 4 questions into their native languages. And we have world experts that provided translations in ancient languages, and then parodies that people have created, parodies that people had already created. And in many cases, we just simply collected them. Now, in my interactive talks, I always say, since we're talking about the questions, the first question people always ask us is how we got started. And then I just stop for a while and I wait till someone figures out that you're supposed to say, how did you get started, Murray? But over Zoom, it's a little harder to do that. So I'm assuming all of you are asking me how you got started. Okay, so in my co-author's case, he was at a Seder for a long time ago, and the Seder leader knew that he loved Spanish culture, and he asked him to translate right there on the spot, make a translation into Spanish. And the following year, someone said, I took French in high school. Another person said, I went to Italy for one summer. Another person said, I'll do my Zadie's Yiddish. Jerry, before we were starting, Jerry said he still remembers his Zadie's Yiddish. So I'm glad to keep that alive. And so when he started leading Seders on his own for his own family, he tried to add a new language every single year. Now, in my own case, a friend of mine came up to me and says, I do a really good impersonation of someone who's famous. I want you to record me. He says, I know you do some really kooky stuff at your Seder, and now you know why he said that. And at my Seder, I introduced it by saying we have a special visitor from Disney Enterprises. Wasn't able to come, but they sent this tape. Now, when I do my children's talks, I say, who is that? And they say, that's Donald Duck. I said, how many of you knew that Donald Duck was so much fun, do so much Hebrew? So it was really fun, and I started collecting other translations. But a pivotal point in this project happened when in my company newspaper, I worked at Bell Labs. In my company newspaper, there was a story about an Orthodox Jew that was translating the book of Jonah into Klingon. Now, I hope most of you know what Klingon is. One person said it's the most Jewish of languages. Klingon was used in Star Trek. And I emailed him and I said, would you translate the 4 questions? And when he sent me the recording, we were kind of puzzled. And this is a very lame joke, but I'm going to say, when we got the recording, we were kind of puzzled. See if you can figure out why. So this works best in person. So over Zoom, it's not going to work too well. But I said, when we first got the recording, we were puzzled. We thought the people on Klingon wouldn't be using the Ashkenazic melody. Okay, so enjoy the jokes. They don't get any better than that. And I'm just setting a very low bar. Now, I mentioned that this is a very pivotal point. Why? Because this guy is the world's expert on how Klingon is pronounced. He's not the creator of the language, but he runs the Klingon Language Institute's website. And his mother sings in a choir, a community choir that I'm still part of. And I went over to her and I was talking to her about it. And I said, this other guy overhears the conversation. He says, what are you talking about? I said, well, I've been asking people to translate the 4 questions. And he says, well, for the past 17 years, I've been asking people to translate the 4 questions. We were astounded at this coincidence. We're the only 2 people on earth doing this. And we were in the same small choir. We said, imagine how many people around the world would be interested. The answer still might be 2. But we decided to combine our resources. And within a year, we had over 50 languages. It took only a couple years before we passed through 100 languages. And like I've said at the beginning, this has been used in thousands of Seders. And you can surprise your guests with Donald Duck if you want to as well. Now, this started during the early days of the internet, and we posted something. We said, has anyone ever translated the 4 questions into their language? And we got this response from a guy by the name of P.V. Viswanath. And he says, I speak Tamil. I have created this translation for my family. And I asked him to record his youngest daughter, and he did. Now, if you look at this real carefully, she's trilingual. I know my cursor is really small. I tried to make it big, but Zoom doesn't make the big cursor transmitted. So I apologize for that. But look at this. She says she's trilingual. She speaks Tamil, English, and Yiddish. How does this happen? They're the only family that have this trio of languages. Well, the father speaks Tamil, and he loves languages. And when he was walking past the Yiddish Institute in New York, he said, that would be an interesting language to learn. And fast forward a couple of years, he ends up marrying into a very famous family of Yiddishists. And so they've taught all of their children to be fluent in Yiddish. And Mina is no longer 7 years old. She's raising a family on her own. She's got 3 daughters of her own right now. And she sings to them in Yiddish and has engendered a love of Yiddish in that one as well. In that generation as well. Okay, I think you can appreciate at this point that this is a unique project. But as you well know, This is not the text that's been translated into the most languages. The book that has been translated into most languages is, of course, the Bible. The Bible's been translated into thousands of languages, but the purpose of those translations was what? That was for missionary zeal, to take the word of God to all the peoples around the earth. And our own purpose in doing this was just simply to have fun at the Seder and to enjoy things and to teach things about the world, about Jews around the world at our own Seders. Now, what I plan to cover in the remaining time that I have with you is I'm going to teach you a little bit about the Seder, the history of the Seder, and I'll tell you some things about the 4 questions that aren't well known, and then I'm going to take you on a little trip. We'll tell you a little bit about the 4 Questions Project, some of the people that we met. I'll tell you some of their stories, and then show you some highlights from the collection, and then I'll wrap up with how you can use this at your own Seder. Now, I want to approach the topic of the history of the Seder via the 4 questions. Now, many people think that the questions that we use today are the same questions that were used thousands of years ago. But I know this is a very intelligent crowd, and many of you are saying, no, thousands of years ago, the questions were a little bit different. And in fact, the one that is the most famous is about the one about leaning. Thousands of years ago, we didn't talk about leaning. Instead, the question was, on all other nights, we eat meat either roasted, stewed, or boiled, but tonight we only have roasted meat. Now, the symbolism of, there's lots of things in the Seder that is symbolic, and certainly everything in the 4 questions is symbolic. And the symbolism of roasted meat is the Korban Pesach, the temple sacrifice. Every holiday, the ancient Israelites brought grain offerings and animals for sacrifice at the Holy Temple. And when the Second Temple was destroyed nearly 2,000 years ago, the rabbi said, it's, we weren't able to do animal sacrifices or grain offerings for that matter. And the rabbi said it's no longer appropriate within the Seder to refer to an activity, to refer to a ceremony that we can no longer perform. And around that time, we were under Greco-Roman occupation. We were under Greco-Roman control. And the Roman nobility at the time were having these grand feasts, and they were laying down on lecti on these wonderful couches and eating. And as they were doing that, they were leaning on their left elbow. Does that sound familiar? That's why we do it. And the rabbis looked at that, leaning while eating, and they said, that looks like freedom. So they took that activity, they took that custom, and they used it for our own symbolic purposes in our own Seder. And there's another thing that we do that's based on Roman custom, and that's the salt water. Many people don't know. Where does the salt water come from? Well, it's the symbolism, of course, is the tears of slavery. Where does it come from? It was Roman salad dressing. Salt was a very valuable commodity at the time. The Roman nobility certainly could afford it, and it makes things taste better. So that's another thing that we have borrowed from the Roman custom. And in fact, the entire Seder is based on the Roman symposia. The Roman symposia was a grand feast, and they had discussions of the issues of the day and talking about their history. And we have a grand feast also, and we talk about our own history. So those are things that refer, that connect our own Seder to the Roman custom thousands and thousands of years ago. Now, in getting these translations, we would locate somebody that spoke a language that was very interesting, one that we did not have yet, and we'd explain a project by saying that we have this text from an ancient ceremony that talks about freedom from oppression. And we'd like to see how this text would be represented in your own language, in your own culture. And they say, that sounds like a worthwhile project. I'd be happy to help you. And sometimes within a couple of weeks, we'd have the translation. But most of the time, it was a lot harder. And the record for us, in terms of how long it took us to get a translation, is this. This, ladies and gentlemen, is how the Navajo Indians would say the 4 questions. Now, I could ask you to come to your chat window, but I'm not going to do that, and say, how many Navajo do you think are Jewish? Most people think the answer is 0. You're very close. You're very close. There's one person that's from the Navajo Nation that converted to Judaism. I met that person's rabbi, and he was wearing a yarmulke that had Navajo themes on it. He was very proud of that. Now, she's a very interesting person. I'll tell you a little bit about her. She's an artist, And so she makes a lot of Judaica, chuppahs and ketubas and yarmulkes, and she weaves together the two traditions of the Navajo patterns and puts them on the Judaica. She is not the one that did the translation, though. Navajo is an exceedingly difficult language. In fact, many of the indigenous languages around the world, the Native American languages and indigenous languages, are very, very complex. In many cases, children are not considered to be fluent, competent in their own language until they're 13 or 14 years of age. Now, in terms of Navajo, many of you are familiar, I know this crowd, many of you are familiar with the Navajo code talkers. But those of you who haven't heard the story, it's on the page in the book, that during World War II, the Navajo, as well as a couple other tribes, converted our messages that were sent to our troops in Japan into Navajo. And this was a code that the Japanese were never able to crack, because guess what? Japan has no Navajo. It's a very, very difficult code, and so they performed a very valuable service for our nation. Now, in fact, we worked with 15 people over the course of 7 years to get the translation. And we got this translation from a wonderful, wonderful person within the Navajo Nation, and we're very much indebted to her. Now, we're getting these translations. A lot of these were obtained from people before everyone on earth has a computer, and some of them came to us like this. Now, my co-author is an expert on the writing systems of the world, and so it was his task to be able to choose the letters based on the handwritten version. Now, he's been a pharmacist for 50 years. Now, I can't hear you laughing, but I know a lot of you are getting it. He says that his skill at being able to decode doctors' handwriting wasn't good enough to be able to do this. So what we did is we would send people a font chart. And what this is the different letters of their script, different letters of their language, each in its own numbered box. And we'd say, tell us the numbers that we have to use, and then we'd know which letter to type. And so they would tell us what numbers. It's tedious, but it's very straightforward. Now, this particular person said, I don't want to use your stinking numbers. And so she relabels the boxes with Greek letters, and down here with Roman numerals, and up here with geometric symbols. And up here on the top is her sheet that says, here's how our code sheet to tell you what letters to type. And we said we didn't know if that was an O, is that a 0, is that the Greek letter Omicron? Cindy, use the numbers. So eventually she does, and we're passing these sheets back and forth through the mail. So she says, this word is wrong. You've got to use letter number 98, 69. After 2.5 years of sending these sheets back and forth through the mail, she says, I can't do this anymore. Every time I look at this, I get headaches. I've got to find somebody else to help you. So we work with that person. We work with another person. Eventually, we end up with this beautiful, beautiful script. This is the language that the Mongolian monks chant in. It's written vertically. It's a beautiful script. It's written vertically. So this is, why is this night different from all other nights? ? Now, we worked with 4 people over the course of 7 years. 1 page in the book. 1 page in the book. Now, we have famous people that provided translations for us. We have the first native Mayan novelist that gave us 2 Mayan languages. We have world experts in ancient languages. We have the person that obtained the highest degree that the Russian Academy of Sciences gives out. But most people don't know the Mayan novelist, and most people don't know the Russian Academy of Sciences person. So we wanted somebody that Americans would recognize. So I wrote to all of the presidents. I say, Mr. Bush, Mr. Clinton, Mr. Reagan, I want your voice to be the example for English in our worldwide collection. I wrote to Shimon Peres and Elie Wiesel. Unfortunately, I got more rejections than a kosher deli in Syria. But I was eventually put in contact with a very famous actor and performer and singer, and he recorded for me. I was sitting in his hotel room, and he recorded the Yiddish. I'm going to let him introduce himself.
This is Theodore Bickel, chanting in Yiddish.
So I hope most of you know who Theodore Bickel is. He performed Tevye in Fiddler on the Roof, thousands of stages around the world. He sang in multiple languages. He was fluent in several languages. He loved this book. He wrote for us a very eloquent foreword. And if you want to, if your minhag is to use a little bit of electricity during your Seder, you could have Theodore Bickel at your Seder doing the Yiddish if you don't want to do it yourself. I encourage you to do it yourself if you know it, of course. So he was an icon to the Jewish community, and I honor him. He died a few years ago, and I honor him at every one of our presentations. Now, we do have someone that's just amazing that did the English. It wasn't any of the presidents. It's not a name of anybody that you know, but I'm going to approach this by saying this. What book is the world's authority of the words of English? So if you want to come to your chat message and tell me what book you think is the best authority of the words. Okay, perfect. Okay, Tybell. Perfect, 10 points for you, the OED. So for those of you that don't know, the OED is the Oxford English Dictionary. Many people say Merriam-Webster's. Nah, the OED's got it over everybody else. It's 20 volumes. It was a 70-year project, and it's 20 volumes. It takes up an entire shelf on the library. We have the chief editor of the Oxford English Dictionary saying the 4 questions. He'd never said the word matzah before. It was a personal milestone. Okay, so I want to tell you that in getting these translations from people, sometimes we would learn things about other cultures, and I'll tell you a couple of those stories. So we had a handwritten version of the questions in Marathi. This is a language from India. There are Jews that speak the language. In fact, I have a Marathi Haggadah. But at the time, we needed help in typing this up. And across the hall from me in Bell Labs was somebody who was a Marathi speaker. And I said, Kirtika, would you type this up for us? And she says, of course, I'll be happy to help you. I said, but before you do, would you please translate it back into English so that we can verify that the translation is really, really good? She says, oh, sure, of course. Why is this night so special compared to other nights? In fact, every one of them was perfect, except on all other nights, we do not have a sumptuous meal once, but tonight we have a sumptuous meal twice. I said, Kirtika, does it really say that? And she says, it's an idiom, but that's what it means. I said, well, it's supposed to say on all of the nights we don't dip once, but tonight we dip twice. She says, yes, that's exactly what it says. I said, what? Kirtika, why? And she says, in Marathi, and only in Marathi. When you talk about dipping, it really means that you're having a sumptuous feast. And that very nicely represents how we feel about our celebratory meal. So we learned something interesting about other cultures, and many of these things are on the different pages of the book. Now, we were interested in how this ancient text would be said in ancient English. And it's a long story. It's on the book. It's in the cover of on the page on the book that explains the whole thing. But I'll tell you that we worked with 7 professors over a course of a year. Professors in England and also in America, and they transformed the 4 questions into Chaucerian English, and they gave us a 4-page treatise that explained all the different word choices. And one example was, they said, when you're talking about dipping, time of Chaucer, most times you're talking about baptism. I don't think you want a baptism at your Seder, so we'll come up with another way to represent it. So that's just a couple of the stories. There's many more stories I could regale you with the entire Seder night long. Okay, now we very likely have every language of Jewish heritage. I want to show you just a sample of them. So we've got Lithuanian, we have Polish, we have Romanian, we have German, we have Czech, we have Ukrainian, we have Russian, we have Belarusian, we have the languages of the Jews from Azerbaijan, the languages of the Jews from Iraq, the languages of the Jews from Yemen, the 4 languages that are used from the Jews from Uganda, 2 languages that are used by the Jews from Ethiopia. And the last one that I'm going to land on here is the Jews from Cochin, India. And this is a rich community. A community that has a rich amount of history. They had been there for over 1,000 years, and they had a very, very beautiful temple. They still have a very beautiful temple that on the 400th anniversary, the Indian government commemorated their 400th anniversary by issuing a stamp. So Adas Israel, from my research, you're about 135 years. So you only have 265 more years to go before you can petition the U.S. government to issue a stamp. And I want to point out that on every single page, there are pictures or illustrations from those countries. We tell you about the translator, we tell you about the language, as well as showing you a transliteration if the translation is in a non-Latin alphabet, so you can see how to pronounce it, or you can just simply play the CD or the DVD. Now, many people are thrilled to find out about the statistics associated with this. I mentioned at the very, very top that this is a 40-year project. Over this course of time, we were able to obtain 335 languages. We've got 22 ancient languages, many of them from world experts in each of those languages. We've got more than 36 Native American languages, like the Navajo that I showed you. We probably have every language of Jewish heritage. We've got dozens and dozens of parodies that kids, as well as adults that never grew up, enjoy. But the most unbelievable thing of all is that we have contributions from 850 people from 102 countries. Many people say this is the most multicultural book that they've ever seen. Okay, now how do we organize this when we were going to publish this? How, do we use alphabetic or, what different times? So what we decided to do was we organized everything like a timeline. So we put the languages at the beginning of the book. Those are the ancient languages. And then the middle of the book are living languages. And then at the back of the book are parodies. Now, if you have to leave our webinar early, I'm giving you a special offer for tonight's participants, for the people that are on the mailing list. So this is something, if maybe one of the Jerrys, you want to type this, it's a link from your promotion, what that is. So it's Wise as Night, then orders-specialdiscount.html, or people can photograph that with their phone. Okay, so I want to urge you to take advantage of that soon. I'll tell you why at the end of the presentation. So back to the presentation. So we have this timeline, ancient languages, living languages, and parodies. I'm going to show you some highlights, and I'll teach you some things and some interesting things. I hope things that are interesting for you from each section. So for the ancient languages, the first one that I want to show you is ancient Aramaic. Now, Aramaic was spoken throughout the Mideast for more than 1,200 years. And more people spoke Aramaic than spoke Hebrew. And it's still used in the prayers that the Jews say every single day, and that's the Reader's Kaddish, the Mourner's Kaddish. A portion of that is in Aramaic. And many of you have a ketubah. Back behind me over here, there's my wedding ketubah. If it's a traditional ketubah, you have Aramaic hanging on your walls. That's not in Hebrew if it's a traditional ketubah. And in the portion of the Haggadah, the phrase that says, "Let all who are hungry come and eat with us," that is in Aramaic also. Why? Because if you're going to invite people to your house and you open up your doors and say, "Come have dinner with us, a grand feast," and you say it in Klingon or in ancient Mongolian, you're not going to get many takers. At the time that the Haggadah was compiled, that was the language of the streets. So we were inviting people in Aramaic because that's what people spoke at that time. Okay, next I want to show you. Let's see, here we go. This gives me a thrill every time I show this to people. A British-trained Egyptologist taught us how the 4 questions would have been said at the exact time of the Exodus. There's nothing that you can put your hands on that has such a direct connection to the Exodus. Now, we do have a recording. How's that? Well, we didn't have iPhones back then. But this is linguists' best understanding of what the language sounds like. Now the glyph, these are hieroglyphics, so that's called a glyph. This is a glyph that's one of the words in the 4 questions. Many of you would already know that's leaning, and you're right. But it's not an ordinary guy on a lazy bed. There's a lot of detail in these hieroglyphics. So this fellow is leaning on a couch, and the couch itself has the head of a lion, the tail of a lion, and the paws of a lion. And the guy himself has got a very long beard. That indicates someone of very high status. So there's a lot of detail, a lot of meaning in all of this. Now we also have ancient Sumerian, We have Moabite. You read about these guys in Exodus. The next one is ancient Phoenician. These folks were great mariners. They had great influence throughout the Mideast. And the last one of the ancient languages that I'm going to land on is Akkadian. This is the world's first writing system. It's 5,000 years old. Writing, these were wedges that were pressed into clay, and there's a lot of Akkadian fragments all over the world. Any natural history museum has just about any natural history museum around the world, if it's a fairly sizable one, they've got Akkadian in there. Now, this is how writing began. There were wedges that were pressed into clay, and it was a way to show what's contained inside of a pot. So if you know you're going to put 3 beans inside of a pot, and it's shipped from one place to the other, how do you know what's inside? You got to crack the pot open. No, you're going to put right on the outside. And Akkadian was used that, so you press it into the pot and then fire the pot. And that's how you know what's inside of it. If it's a sealed pot, obviously. Okay, come to your chat. Come to your chat window. I'm going to ask you all a question. So we are now going to go from the ancient languages to the living languages. And what language is spoken by more people on earth than any other language? First person to answer correctly gets 10 points. Okay, very good. Ruth, you got it. So Chinese, yes. But now, actually, there are dozens of Chinese languages. So I'm going to ask you for a better answer than just simply plain old Chinese. Anybody? Not Cantonese, sorry, no, Mandarin, all of you that got Mandarin, so 10 points for all of you. So Mandarin Chinese is spoken by over 1 billion people. They may speak other Chinese languages, there are dozens of them, but everyone pretty much uses this as the lingua franca. Now in my talks, I always ask this question, and some people actually think Spanish is the world's most popular language. No. Some people think English is. No. 540 million people, only 540 million people speak English. Twice that number is the number of people who speak Mandarin Chinese. Now, there were Jews that lived in central China for 800 to 900 years. That was actually the topic of one of my Seders. And that the last of the practicing Jews, they lived in the central China where the capital of China was at the time. And the last of the traditional Jews, the last of the Jews to understand Hebrew, died out in 1850. So we can say that the community died out at that time. And this is a representation of the Haggadah that those Jews used. Okay, now I'm going to go from the language that 1 billion people speak to the rarest language that we were able to get. And you all know a word in this language. So here it is. This is Lenape. Now, the word that you all know, it's a little hard for me to say it, so give me a second here. Manhattan. It's actually not exactly Manhattan, it's Mannahatta, but it's based on Lenape. Of course, Lenape were the Native Americans that lived in Manhattan, so the settlers from Europe, they purchased, quote unquote, Manhattan from the Lenape Indians. There's also most all of New Jersey and portions of Pennsylvania and New York were the ancient tribal lands of Lenape. This is what the language sounds like. Okay, now that is a woman by the name of Diane Snake. She is going to be 81 years old this year. She's the youngest speaker left. There's only 3 people left who can speak the language. Only 3 people speak. Okay, now, I showed you languages from 1 billion people to just 3 people. Now I'm going to go to the back of the book and the parodies about the 4 questions. And I tell kids, you don't have to do the 4 questions in Hebrew. It's a little seditious to tell them this, but I say, you can surprise everyone by doing it in Pig Latin. Now, you can do it in English. You can say, I weigh, is ye, itne, ifrente, but it's a heck of a lot more annoying to do it in Hebrew. Now, I know all of you, I can hear you. You say, wait a second, I spend so much time cleaning around my house, I don't want to have anything that even refers to pig at my Seder. It's chanted for you by an Orthodox yeshiva student. It's glatt kosher, no problem whatsoever. So you can surprise people with it this way. All right, so someone who runs a Shakespeare festival in New York had already created, oh, excuse me, that's not the next one. The next one I want to show you is the semaphore flags. This is my co-author's favorite. And he found this in a magazine many, many years ago. This is the semaphore that the Israeli Navy used to use before the wireless communication. And as one of the versions of the 4 questions, his daughters used semaphore flags in front of the table and did the 4 questions in semaphore. Now, I was about to say about the Shakespearean festival. He had already created this. We just collected it from him. He created a Shakespearean sonnet. We look from friend to friend and ask of them why dark of night is different to us on this occasion, such that brings us here. It gives a level of erudition that you don't find in that Maxwell House. Now we have its exact diametric opposite. What could that be? Yeah, we got Valley Girl. Like, why is this night like totally different from all other nights? Now, I can see your hands. How many of you have lawyers in your immediate or extended family? Raise your hands. Yes, okay, some of you. Very good. You can make fun of them. Why is this night defined as that period of time commencing at sundown according to readily established? It's a whole page. It's just the first question. So you can torment people with even more lawyerese. All right, and we've got a Jamaican reggae. Now, when I did my children's talks, when we first brought this out, I said, we have every language you've ever heard of. See if you can name a language we don't have. And kids asked for rap. I said, you know what? I don't have a rap version. So for our second edition, I contacted a very famous rap artist who's performed with schlock rock. I'm sure a lot of you know about schlock rock. And it's 3 o'clock in the morning to meet our deadline. He created this amazing, amazing melody.
What's not different than the other nights? Well, I got 4 answers. I'm gonna tell them to you. It's you.
So usually I say at this point, we've got every language you've ever heard of. See if you can name a language we don't have. Now, because it's Zoom, we're going to postpone that to the end of the presentation. So if we have time at the end, and I know we will, you can see if whether or not we've got the language, and I'll tell you some things about it. But while you're thinking about it, here are the ground rules. No using of the internet. No, don't use your phone. This has to be a language you already know about. And Jerry's going to collect them. We'll ask for these at the end of the presentation. You don't have to tell us now. And then I'll tell you some things about the different languages. Okay, this is now the most important part of the talk. And I often say, how many of you are going to be going to 2 Seders this year? Most people raise their hand. And what I respond is, you know, if you're like some people, certainly not this crowd, but if you're like some people, the question shouldn't be, why is this night different from all other nights? The question might be, why is tonight the same as what we had last night? Well, here are ways to make all of your Seders different, engaging, fun, and stimulating. Now, so the first step is to recognize that the Seder is modeled on the ancient Roman symposia. So it's perfectly fine to have a couple other activities. Certainly don't do all these things in one night. Save these up, choose the best of the ideas for one Seder, use them next Seder, think about what to do the following year. Now, so there are serious ways and there's very fun ways. So some of the serious ways. The Seder is all about talking about history. Why not use these materials to share something about your own family's history? You can say that you had family like I did that came from Ukraine, or you had family that came from Romania, or family that came from Lithuania. Using these materials as a jumping off point to talk about the Jewish communities there. What was the experiences and the accomplishments of those generations of Jews? There's also a way of welcoming people to the Seder. Many of you have families, have members of your family that came from another country, or you might have a Seder guest that comes from another country. There's someone in my synagogue whose son married a girl from Vietnam, and each year they have her read the Vietnamese translation. And in so doing, they say that we treasure your background. We give you an honored spot at the Seder table. Now, of course, slavery is a central theme of the Seder. But slavery didn't stop 3,500 years ago. What many people have done is they've added some readings of Nelson Mandela and his struggle against apartheid, and then bring in some of the languages from his area of the world. Many people are delighted to hear that we have Nelson Mandela's native language. It's one of 4 click languages that we have. I'm not a native speaker, but it's sort of pronounced like, I can't even do it. I need to wet my whistle. Anyway, you'll hear it on the CD. So this is the native language of Nelson Mandela when he went home to speak with his children and family. This is the language that he was using. Now, America struggled with slavery as well. Although we're 150 some years after the Emancipation Proclamation, we're still having some of the ill effects of the slavery that occurred then. And many people are very, very amazed to hear that we have some of the same languages of the slaves that were shipped from West Africa in the slave trade. And one of those examples is Malinke. Now, we talked about endangered languages. There's only 3 people left that speak Lenape. Now, Jews have endangered languages also. And during my in-person talks, I say, give me an example of a Jewish language that's endangered. And a lot of people say Yiddish. And I say, no, I showed you a family that made sure that all of their children were fluent in Yiddish. Many people are taking Yiddish courses and taking Yiddish lessons. And so the language is being kept alive. A much better example is Ladino. This is the language of the Jews that were expelled from Spain. It's a 15th century Spanish. Those of you who know Spanish, you can look at this and say, you know, it's like Shakespearean English. It's not a modern Spanish. All of the people that speak it are elderly. As far as I know, there's very, very few people that are learning the language. Those of us who are in choirs, we do sing in Ladino, but that's not learning the language, I'll tell you. Now, an even better example is Romagnot. This is a Judeo-Greek that is spoken in the Jews that live in Thessalonica, or as the Jews called it, Yanina. This was a very thriving community prior to the Holocaust. There was practically a synagogue on every corner. Now there's less than 50 people that speak the language. I spoke with one of them just a few years ago. She said, we're small. The reason I spoke to her, by the way, is I wanted to find out the chants that are used by that community. And so she said, we're small, but we're strong. We're going to keep the language strong and keep our culture as strong as we can. All right, you look at your news feed. Hebrew was once an endangered language also. And it wasn't an endangered language. I should apologize for that. Hebrew was once a dead language. Very few people used it except for prayers, just like Latin. 140 years ago, there was nobody that we didn't have words for modern things like a wristwatch or a bicycle. And it was the passion of Eliezer ben Yehuda that brought it back to life. And now we've got a national language with millions of speakers. Now, those are some of the, I'll say, serious ways of using it, of using these materials. Some of the fun ways is simply people pass the book around. One person says, I'll do the Yiddish. Another person tries to do the Hungarian. Another one will do the Valley Girl. And maybe we'll try the rap version. You know, you put your cap on backwards and put some sunglasses on. What some people have done, I meant to bring this here and I didn't. I forgot. I don't have it right here next to me. What some people have done is they've transformed our pages into placemats. And if you buy the book, email me and I will send you a file that you can take to your copy shop and make a placemat and laminate it and put it underneath. So you say, Fred over there, he's got a background that came from Hungary, have him attempt the Hungarian. Another, someone put it put the lawyerese under the lawyer's placemat. The kids will have fun with the Valley Girl or maybe one of the more modern languages from some of the movies or Klingon, and it's really lots of fun. Okay, so I mentioned that I collected the chants that are used around the world. This is a way of honoring these communities around the world. It's also easy to teach these melodies to your children. Some of them are quite beautiful and easy to learn. This is Judeo-Iraqi. Here's Yemenite. Now the Jews from Libya,
מה נשתנה הלילה הזה מכל הלילות
and here's Ladino,
Cuánto fue demudada la noche, la esta más que todas las noches.
and then the last one is the Jews from Uzbekistan.
נשתנו הלילה הזה מכל הלילות שבכל הלילות.
So on the Seder night, we are sitting at the Seder table, and Jews all around the world are celebrating Pesach. Why not bring some of those Jews and a little bit of their culture to your own Seder table? Play some of these chants or sing some of these chants and honor those communities as well. Now, I mentioned my co-author's daughters using the semaphore, and there's something that you can do. I think what's even more fun is there's a page on the DVD that you can print out, and you can give a piece of the semaphore along with flags to everyone in your room. And around the room, everyone's doing Manish Tana, pretending that they're with the Israeli Navy in the Mediterranean. It's lots of fun. Okay, let's talk about traditions of Jews around the world. Many of you, I know you're a very intelligent crowd and knowledgeable crowd, but some people don't know this, and I want to encourage you to do it. The tradition of the Jews from Iran, the Persian Jews, during Dayenu, they take scallions and they slap their neighbors. Dayenu, Dayenu. Because they're limp, they really don't hurt. It's supposed to remind you of the taskmaster's whip. It's lots of fun. It's really, it's a great thing to do. It's a very popular custom. Now, in the Haggadah, we read that we are obligated to feel as though we personally left Egypt. How do we do that? We read that and then move on. How's that fulfilling the obligation? Well, many people, many communities around the world act out as a skit. And one of my favorite things to do is during the Jews from Germany, after Karpas, everyone takes a piece of matzah, they wrap it in some napkins, and they leave the Seder table. They go to the four corners of the house. They feel as though they're actually leaving. And so that's a way to do that. It's really nice to do. Okay, now, so I think it's time to summarize what I've talked about. So in sum, I showed you some activities to do, different games, crafts, decorations, songs to sing, resources I'm going to point you to in the next slide. But the goal here is to make it real. Tell something about your family story, make it personal, but by all means, make it fun. There's a Talmudic teaching that says that only the lesson that is enjoyed is the lesson that is learned. And I very much embody that. Okay, so now here are the resource sites. So the first one is you just simply Google Seders for You, and what you'll find is a resources handout with many of the suggestions that I've talked about today, this evening. All those songs, we have ready-to-use Haggadahs that you want. If you want a Haggadah that talks about the archaeological evidence for the Exodus, if you want to have different relationships between the Seder themes and various musicals, you can find those there. Different aliyahs, the different waves of immigration to Israel. There's lots of different Seders that you can just simply print out and use. The book, the site for our book, Why Is This Night? We also have on here, it talks about the book, but also we also have Seder traditions, more than 36 traditions and customs from Jews all around the world. Now there's that Seder link, the special website webinar link. Again, Jerry, if you could put that into chat. I want to encourage you. This is what it looks like now. If you are far away from New Jersey, if you're in New York, no problem. But if you're in the Midwest, if you're on the West Coast, if you're in Florida, I want to encourage you to order now. Why? Because the shipping is free. There's also 20% off, and the shipping is absolutely free. But as we get closer to Pesach, I'm not going to be able to ship it free. I'm going to have to raise the price on the shipping. The cost of the book will still be $32. And by all means, request an inscription. This is something that Amazon can't do. When I send them out, people can inscribe them. You can give them as gifts. I'll send them anywhere to the United States for free. So I hope you can appreciate, I'm going to sum up, I hope you can appreciate we don't view this as a language project, but something that fosters cross-cultural appreciation, viewed through the context of the four questions. Our prayer is that families will teach their children the theme of peace and understanding. Why peace? Because the more than 850 people are living together in this book. There are peoples who are warring with each other, and their translations are on neighboring pages. Now, all faiths, all cultures, Hindus, Muslims, Aboriginals, priests and princesses, believe me, prince and princesses made contributions to this project. It's a remarkable legacy that they've left us. As I said earlier, most people say this is the most multicultural book that they've ever seen. And I'm going to end with two things that a parent told me about their response of their kids. They said, it is really rare to see something so scholarly and fun. They said it really kept our grandson really engaged. But my favorite thing is, they said that our kids took turns sneaking it into school in their backpacks and reading it with their friends. When was the last time you've heard about kids sneaking a book of Judaica into school? If you don't think this is the coolest book ever, your kids, your grandkids, the rest of your family will. So I want to thank you very much for being attentive, and I look forward to your questions, and I look forward to inscribing your books. So let's open it up. So Jerry, tell me some of the questions we got.
Okay, now I'm unmuted. I don't know what to ask or what to say, because I can't imagine something not covered. The only thing I can think of, you said there is one, if I remember, one language that you do not have in the book. What is
Well,
it?
you asked me for something that was a dialect. Okay, I'm putting in the link, wisestnight.com, orders, special discount.html. So there it is. I didn't see the link before, so copy that. It should show up. Maybe we need to say it with HTTPS. I don't know, maybe here. Yes, so I didn't collect dialects because I said this was a 40-year project. We have only this entire book. Look at it. This entire book is 5% of the world's languages. 5%. If I were to collect dialects, it would take 400 years. So we didn't do that. Okay, sometimes when you post up in chat, it ends up being a link, and I don't know why it's not turning it into a link. But anyway, there you go. That copy that, save your chat, and we'd love to see your suggestions. So I said at the beginning, if you can see if you can name a language we don't have. So let's see some of those suggestions.
And by the way, Murray, for some people, the link isn't working. Other people, it is working. So I'll do some experimenting with make sure we have the right one that anyone can use. And when the email goes out for the recording, that email. Right now, I was able to use your link and copy before I worked to use it. So we'll figure it out.
Okay, and I
have a way of getting this discount.
And I want to just remind people that in the information that was sent out, that to which you were able to register for tonight's program, in that information was contained that link. So you can go back in your email, and that's where you'll find it.
I tried to use that link, by the way. I wasn't able to. It works for something.
All right, I don't know why.
Why should work all the time?
Okay. All right. So I'm not going to answer all questions in terms of how long will it take. It takes somewhere between, based on your distance from New Jersey, 3 to 5 days.
Mm-hmm. Here and there. Are you still selecting?
Yes, we are. I'm trying to get. There's a Native American language from Arizona. I have a MacArthur Grant recipient, and Lem. I don't. Marcia. All right. So let me see if we have this. So now we're going to go back to here. So I'm going to type LEM. All right. So Lem is not the language that linguists use to, let's see. So these are the languages that linguists know about. So maybe there's a different name for it. Oh, that's it. The problem. Yes. Okay. HTTPS. Right. So just use 2 T's, not 3. Excellent. Thank you so much, Jill. Okay. Any others? Elvish. All right. Wonderful. So we have Quenya. This was invented around 1915. Excellent. One of the constructed languages we've got. Come on, I'm sure you guys can come up with some obscure languages.
No.
Oh, we're pretty quiet. Okay, yes, another name for Judeo-Tat is Jewry. The spelling that I had was J-U. There's many different ways of spelling it. Yes, that's right. Okay, well, as you know what we can do. Okay, Inuit. Oh, I'm so glad you said that. Okay, so most people know this as Eskimo. All right, so I have a wonderful story. So the name of the language is Inuktitut. The name of the people is Inuit. Most of us know it as Eskimo. There's 14,000 people that speak it. And in terms of how common it is, it's quite uncommon. So up here, the number would be 1 for Mandarin. So this is the 2,700th most common language. Why do I love telling you about this language? The person that did the translation for us is not a priest in the Catholic Church. He's a bishop in the Catholic Church. He was responsible for the New Testament translation for his tribe, and he was delighted when we asked him to do the translation of the 4 questions, because this was a connection to the Old Testament. So I love it when people ask about Eskimo. Thank you.
Murray, that reminds me that years ago, I don't know whether it still exists, in Oklahoma, there's a Protestant evangelical group that used to parachute into the Amazon, among other places, in order to learn the language, and they were linguists, in order to learn the language and translate it into the good word.
To learn about the languages. Yeah, there are many, like for instance, there's one group called the Endangered Languages Association. There's actually jewishlanguages.org. There's many linguists around the world. I don't know how I forgot to say this. During the endangered languages section, I should have told you this. We lose a language every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Every 2 weeks, the last elderly person dies. And so it's really important to preserve these languages, because when the language dies, we lose that perspective. We lose their culture. And so it's important to do that. And linguists around the world are working very hard. But languages are going to die. Uyghur. I would love to get Uyghur. I have not been able to been put in touch with a Uyghur person yet. That's on our to-do list. Basque. Yes. So let me show you Basque. So now Basque is a wonderful language. If I type it properly. Okay. So also called Escara. There's let's say roughly 750,000 people who speak it. What's cool about Basque is that it has, even though we know a lot about the occupations and travels of different peoples around Europe, Basque doesn't seem to have any connection to any other European languages. So everyone loves to learn about Basque. So yes, I from the one of the universities there, we got somebody.
How about
now? Okay, so yes, I thank you, Rabbi Sachs. The back of the book. Let me show you. The back of the book has a DVD and a CD. Now, a lot of you don't have CD drives on your computers anymore. That's unfortunate. So if you're interested in a particular thing, if you've bought the book, I'll send you something. But the book contains CDs of the CD and a DVD. The DVD's got the semaphore that you can print out. It's got games and puzzles, guess the language games. There's lots of stuff on the DVD. Okay. Sign languages. Okay. I know you want to move on. I don't know. How much longer can we go? But on the DVD are 5 sign languages that we have. So we have French Sign Language. It was the first sign language to have been written down. We have Israeli Sign Language. We have American Sign Language. And on our website, we've got a pointer to Portuguese Sign Language. So yes, we have sign languages as well. There's just garlic. I assume you mean Gaelic.
I was going to suggest that someone can raise their hand, and maybe they have a special question for you.
Sure, sure.
In terms of the reaction, on the reaction, you can sort of raise your hand electronically.
Yeah.
Roma, Sami.
Ah, love it. Okay, let me tell you about Roma. All right, so Roma, we're going to get Romanian also, but the Romani, the person that did the Romani, so there's about almost 1 million people that speak it. The person that did the Rome translation is from Austin, Texas. He is the Roma representative to the UN, and he is also a member of the Roma Jewish Alliance. Now, you asked about, what was the other one that you asked about?
Sami.
Sami, right. Okay, I got a great story about Sami. I love this. These are great. Okay, so Sami, this is the second one here. So there's about 20,000 people. It's primarily based in Norway, northern Norway. The Sami, so we do have it, yes. The Sami person, she was contacted by a friend who was a radio broadcaster, and we got the Sami translation. And in the translation materials, I said, if your culture has a word for something that's extremely flat, a traditional bread, it would be fine to use your word instead of matzah. That was a consideration I did for those different cultures. Well, the person that was speaking with the Sami person said, oh, no, you can't use the Sami word for your flatbread, leksam, because leksam is round and matzah is only square. No. So I said, wait a second, no problem at all. Traditional matzah really is round. And of course, the Sami don't have matzah making machines. So we taught something about Jewish culture to the Sami. So wonderful, wonderful suggestion. Nepalese. Okay, so Nepal. So from Nepal, we have Nepali, we have Newar, and we have Sherpa. Many people have heard about Sherpas. So we've got 3 languages from Nepal. All right, so that's good. Thank you.
How about the Swiss language, Romansh?
All right, so Swiss, let's see.
Swiss Roman.
Let me do this here again. Okay, so for Switzerland, let me do it this way. Hold on. I've got my windows all messed up here. Okay, so let me say SWIT. So we have Romansh, and we've got a Swiss German. So very good.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? Oh, yes. So it is very popular to go to Nepal for a Seder. It's a very it's a hot spot for the Israelis to go there. And I heard, I don't know if it's apocryphal, that once upon a time one of the largest Seders in the world was in Nepal at the foot of the Himalayas. Right. So the website to find ideas for the Seder. So that's Seders for You. So just Google that. Seders for You, and you can use the letter 4, the number 4. Google will figure it out. Google will figure out what you want. Taiwanese. Okay, so Taiwanese. All right, so of course we have Taiwanese. So let me see. Okay, so Taiwan. So the language is called actually Minnan. Min is the Chinese word for language. So while we're here, so it's the 24th most common language. So there's like 47 million, something like that. But let's go to China. So the languages that we've got Mandarin Chinese, we've got Wu, we've got Yue. I'm not going to be fluent in telling you. Xiang, Hakka, Minbei, Sichuan, Tibetan, which of course is China as well as Tibet, and then we also have Hmong Dao. So that's primarily of Laos, but there's also speakers in China. So look at that. We've got like a dozen Chinese languages.
Murray, do any of the people whom you've asked to translate, do any of them ask a little bit about, well, what tradition is this and why and what does it mean and what is their reaction?
That's a wonderful question. So in the material that I send people, I explain what this, I don't just simply say we're dipping in, bitter herbs, we're having bitter herbs. It's like, what the heck is that? What are you talking about? So I do give an explainer. There's a little one-page sheet that explains what the Exodus was and how long our slavery was and why we're doing these weird things. In fact, I probably answered the questions more than the Haggadah answers the questions. Okay, another language, Malayalam. Well, I showed Malayalam. That was the language from Cochin, India. So you got to see that one. Right. So good question, Mindy. Will there be a revised edition? So this is the third edition already. Each one corrects errors and adds more languages. I'm done publishing books. We're just going to sell off this third edition. The new translations are contained on our website. So one of the links along the top says additional translations, and you can find them there. But those languages are pretty obscure. So if you want most of the main languages, you got to get the book.
Okay, fair enough.
African languages. Oh, wonderful. Right. So we got a lot of African languages. So let's go over here. Just talking about click languages. I don't have it labeled that way. Oh, that's a shame. Okay, so just for Africa, this is South Africa. So we've got Zulu, we've got Xhosa, and we've got the Afrikaans. But here are all the languages from Africa or Central African Republic. It'll be difficult for me to. I don't have them labeled in any particular way, but we've got dozens and dozens of African languages. I'd have to look them up by each country. So I don't have that there. So great. So you wanted to see about Swahili, though. So this is from Tanzania. So about 750,000 people. There are some Jews that live in Tanzania. So there are Jews that speak Swahili. So I don't know if you want to say that that's a language of Jewish heritage, but certainly there are Jews that speak Swahili. Jews speak probably over 100 languages because wherever we work, we're going to learn the language of the country. Because, people aren't going to learn Hebrew. They're not going to learn English. They're not going to learn Yiddish. Most people do know English, of course, but you're going to be a better merchant if you learn their language rather than asking them to learn English. So great. Thank you for that. Wow, I love to see that. Welsh. Okay, Welsh. Let me tell you about Welsh. The person that did the Welsh is a wonderful language. There's about 500,000 people that speak it. So rank order is about 500. It's the 500th most common language. Lovely linguist, one of my colleagues did it. And, what's wonderful about Welsh is that it's even worse than English in terms of being pronounced, not using the letters that we're giving them. Knight, N-I-G-H-T, what's that about? Or why is Colonel got an L in it? Where's the R? So the Welsh are even worse in terms of having lots and lots of consonants in a row that are impossible to say unless you're a native. Okay, the question about on that, if you go to the special discount site, if you go to that particular page, it already applies to 20%. And Rabbi Sachs, if you ended up on the regular ordering page and you already sent it out, just send an email to me that's on the website and say, I accidentally paid too much. I was at your seminar, and I'll give you the refund. Okay, Gaelic, wonderful. So let me come back to this. This is by far the most fun thing to do is to tell people about the different languages we've got. Okay, so I'm going to say Ireland. So we've got a Gaelic Irish, so there's about 390,000 people. The person that did it said that this is a Connemara dialect. It is by far the most most common, it's like Midwestern English. It's the most common Irish dialect, the most recognizable. But we've also got Old Irish. That's in the ancient section. So this is we have the language that was used from around 8th to the 10th century. The four questions, the phrase four questions is in Irish runes. And the linguist said, I wanted to have the whole thing in runes. And they said, well, it's not really possible because the whole language is not really attested to. But most of the runes, the Irish runes, are in just ephemera. These are just scratches in stone. Most of them say things like, I was drunk last night. So he says, I'll translate four questions for you. And that's in the runes on the Irish page. So that one's great. I love talking about these stories. This is wonderful. Give me some more.
Scotch Irish, Scotch Gaelic.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Jerry.
The Scotch Gaelic.
Irish Gaelic, yes.
Yeah. So that was the Gaelic, yeah. Yeah.
Scotland, here's Gaelic.
Oh, so if you're saying Scotland, so we've got Scots also.
Wow.
Different versions.
Come on, guys. I'm sure you can name some more languages.
No.
Again, no using of the web. Don't look anything on your phone because you can find something really obscure there. As I said, there's only 5% of the world's languages. Well, again, maybe we should wrap up because we've been on for about an hour and a half. I want to thank you all. I know that Jerry wants to talk about programs that they have coming up, but before we leave me, I want to thank you all for your wonderful interactions, and I'd love to have you use some of these ideas. Why is tonight going to be different? I hope from some of the suggestions and ideas that I shared with you. So thank you so much. And get the book. It's lots of fun.
Okay.
Okay, and thank you, Murray. Obviously, people have loved the program, and thank you, Jerry, for your work on this. After the recording is posted, I'm going to post the recording on YouTube and then send an email to everyone and where the recording is. But also in that email, I'll give you information on Murray's website and better information on how to get the book in terms of the discount, etc. I'll work with Murray to make sure we have ways for you to really get the book quickly and efficiently. In terms of upcoming classes, a week from tomorrow, we're having a class about Jewish summer camps. So, a lot of stuff going there. And then next month, we're going to have classes on Jewish genealogy, a little introduction, and one session about DNA. And I'm going to give one session with my cousin about how we did genealogical research in our family. So just as non-experts, I want to show how non-experts can actually learn about their family from all kinds of different sources. You don't have to be a genealogist, whatever. Okay, so I'll hope to see many of you next Thursday evening, and we can talk about summer camps. And again, I want to thank Murray, and you will get information on how to get all the materials that Murray has available.
Actually, if I said I would shut up, but there's a great story. So someone asked about languages from Afghanistan, and there's a wonderful story about the Farsi, the Afghani one. A couple in the Midwest had an exchange student from Afghanistan. He was Muslim, and he didn't want to have anything to do with his family. I don't know why he ended up being there, but he wanted to be in America, I guess, for one summer. And they were there for the Seder. He looked at this book, he found his language, and from that point on, he said he was a member of the family. He was so thrilled that they had his language in the book.
Was he Jewish?
No, he's Muslim.
Oh,
He's
okay.
he was from Afghanistan.
Well, there are Afghan Jews.
Yes,
Only two
but
left in Afghanistan, but they're
no, he was a Muslim. He was a Muslim, and he didn't want to have anything to do with his family. He says, I don't, he was kind of sullen. I guess he was part of that. We've got a sullen teenager translation, by the way.
On a personal note, you said people should be able to do the 4 questions in different languages. Jerry, coming to my Seder, you have to do it in Yiddish.
Great. That's wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you.
You get an email there, so.
Sei
Thank you again, Murray.